Welcome to the Beyond the Spine podcast, where precision meets performance. I'm Dr. Bobby Fano, Gonstead chiropractor, educator, and performance strategist. And around here, we don't settle for average. We raise the standard because becoming better isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build through precision, discipline, and purpose. Each episode, I sit down with leading chiropractors, innovators, and performance experts to uncover the principles that drive real results in your body, in your mindset, and your mission. From biomechanics to belief systems, from clinical mastery to personal growth, we explore what it really takes to stay aligned with what matters most, so you can show up stronger in every area of your life. Whether you're a chiropractor sharpening your craft, an athlete pushing your limits, or someone committed to living at your highest level, you're in the right place. Because when the body is aligned, anything is possible. Starting now. Welcome to Beyond the Spine podcast. I'm Dr. Bobby Fano, your host, and I'm sitting down with Dr. Lee Larsen, Gonstead chiropractor in Nebraska. And what we're going to discuss is his amazing invention called the Larsen Filtration System. We're going to geek out on X-ray, on how his product reduces exposure for the patient, gives us clearer images, and how that's super important to get the best results possible. So without further ado, please join me in introducing Dr. Lee Larsen. This is Dr. Lee Larsen. He has invented the Larsen Filtration System. It's been a game changer in my career, and I'm excited to have a chat with him about his invention and how he's changed the X-ray industry for Gonstead chiropractors to create more clarity and precision in their work. So, Dr. Larsen, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I would love to just hear your story. How did you get into the Gonstead world? Obviously you're still in practice. So, just briefly talk about how you got started, your journey to becoming the best chiropractor you can be, and then what turned you on to developing this invention that you have for us today.
Well, what really got me into chiropractic was my dad was one of those unfortunates that had 2 failed back surgeries, and he had seen a chiropractor and had good results. And then I got injured and I went the whole allopathic route, and I damaged my ankle very badly, and they did all the things that they wanted to do: casting, bracing, physical therapy, pain clinic. And a buddy of mine, who's now a physical therapist, ironically, drugged me to my chiropractor. And he was able to help me when nobody else was, and that's how I got into chiropractic. How I got into the Gonstead work was that the first good chiropractor I ever went to was a Gonstead practitioner. And I thought to myself, if I can do that for other people, what a great life.
So how did you get trained?
So I'm at Palmer. Palmer was where I did all my graduate work. I did my undergraduate work in physiology, exercise physiology in Nebraska, and then went on to Palmer to get my DC.
Okay. Who is your biggest influence in the Gonstead work? Like who is your mentor?
I would say Dr. Munster was primarily, but then I've had other mentors like Dr. Pomagel, who teaches seminars also.
Okay. So were you always into the X-ray part of the analysis, the 5 criteria? Was that something that was really intriguing for you early on?
So for whatever reason, when everybody else hated X-ray physics, it was kind of my thing. I loved X-ray physics. So all of my friends always call up, well, what do I need to do if this is happening with this technique? And if it's not enough grayscale, it was just my thing. And I wasn't able to take the kind of X-rays that I thought we needed to have, and we couldn't justify the radiation dose we were getting with the way we were taking our films, attenuating what gets to the film after it's already gone through the patient. So that's kind of how it started. And I bought every X-ray filtration device known to man, and they wouldn't do what I needed and wanted them to do. And so it was kind of out of necessity.
So what were you looking for? Was it clarity or something else?
So with the old split screens or gradient screens, which was another way they did it, is when you go through the patient in the small areas like the neck, when you're taking a lateral, you're blowing through the neck with the same amount of radiation you're going through the pelvis. What they did is they used different fluorescing or intensity fluorescing screens after the radiation had already gone through the patient. So you couldn't justify. They're actually outlawed now. You can't use split screens or gradient screens legally. And the gradient screens just had a small area where it went from one fluorescing setting to another. The split screens were treating a 300-pound man like they're treating a 100-pound female because the splits are not changing. With a system like mine, what happens is you're actually attenuating what gets to the patient, but you're setting the system for that exact patient. So it wasn't because of the radiation dose that I designed this. I wanted better films because what was happening is you were either overexposing the cervical area and the lung fields, or you weren't getting through areas because the lung fields and the cervicals looked good. So it was white in the thicker areas. And I bought the other systems, and it was time consuming to use. It took a whole lot more time in front of the patient, and they just wouldn't do what I needed them to do. So that's how it started.
Okay, so if I'm hearing this right, the split screens, you had to use more power to get through the patient in certain areas.
So what you use, you would set it for the pelvis. You would set it for the thickest area. And so you're going through like I said, the lung fields, which are less dense, and through the neck with the same intensity that you're going through the pelvis. So it's an unjustifiable radiation dose, number one. But what I wanted was a more homogeneous film. I wanted the densities in the neck to be the same as the densities in the pelvis. And you can only set your X-ray machine for one of those intensities. So what we do is we set it for the pelvis, and then we attenuate the thinner areas so it decreases the radiation before it gets to the patient. So you get a more homogeneous one-shot lateral film or one-shot A to P film.
Okay. So when I started, I was using 14 by 36 inch film. Okay.
Split screens, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Because weren't there also like a different material in there that could intensify the X-ray, where you would use a certain exposure and then you can use less exposure?
You would set it for the fluorescence for the pelvis, and what they had inside the screen was areas that fluoresced less with the same amount of radiation getting to them.
Okay.
So what we always do with Gonstead, if your system is set up correctly, you have a cathode on the bottom of your tube, and you have the anode on the top. And the reason for that is what's called the anode heel effect. You're going to get more out of the cathode than out of the anode. So we always set our systems up that way, but it's still, you were using the amount of radiation that's going through the pelvis, you were using in the neck and in the lung fields. What my system does is it filters what gets to the neck and what gets to the lung fields before it ever gets to the patient. But it gives you a more homogeneous or comparable densities for the cervical and the thoracic and the lumbar and the pelvis.
Okay, so this is the problem that you saw. Must have been a moment where you're like, you know what, I'm going to do this myself because I can't find it anywhere else. Is that true?
Well, it was when you trying to split the difference. If the patient's main area of concern was their cervical, I would make sure I got a great cervical. And from T1 down, it was too white. It was not a good density film in the thoracics. Or if their problem was a thoracic, I'm taking a film that looks great in the thoracics, but you have to use a hot light behind the film to see the cervicals because they were overexposed. And
Okay.
I honestly, I was embarrassed at some of my films. When you go to show a patient your films and they're like, why is it so dark there? Yeah, you've got to change something, which is how this thing started.
And that could also impact our clinical results, right? If it's too
Absolutely.
light, if it's not clear. Tell us
Right.
about
So
that.
you're
How
in
does
a,
that affect your results?
so you end up having to take spot shots. You end up having to take secondary films. And again, that's a radiation dose to the patient. With the ALARA laws that are out there, the as low as reasonably attainable laws, it's a violation. I don't know that anybody has ever got in trouble for it, but it's definitely a violation. In Canada, you have to have shielding. You have to have shielding. If they come in to inspect you, you don't have shielding, they'll shut you down. I don't know that that's happening here yet, but it's on its way.
So you're saying filtration, especially your filtration system, reduces the patient's exposure?
Absolutely, and it's exponential. So when you're using the breast shields, for instance, so what it does is it completely blocks all of the radiosensitive organs, excluding the eyes, because you collimate below the eyes with lead. But with my system, either the thyroid is filtered, it is not shielded because it would block pertinent anatomy. A lot of times as chiropractors, we used to use, well, I don't use any shielding because it would block pertinent anatomy. And that was true because some of the shields were too big. They were not anatomically correct. With my system, it blocks the ovaries, but doesn't block the SI joints or the lumbosacral joint if it's placed properly, and it's pretty easy to learn that. It's 4 inches underneath the iliac crest. That's where you place the gonad shield. With a male, we just have them point at their important parts, and we cover that area with a shadow from the gonad shield.
And that's what I love about yours. It's right on the machine. You don't have to have like a swinging mechanism that you screw onto the wall, right? I've seen those before. You don't have to have a little belt. Because I remember when I first started practicing and in school, we had this little Velcro belt, right? That would have the gonadal shield on it.
It was placed positioned properly, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, right. Hardly ever. And
I could never use it.
So I think that's what's incredible about your system is that you can do it right there on the fly. It's fully available. I use the shadows on the patient to, know exactly where I need to be. And it's super quick. It's a huge time saver. So tell me,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh,
I do an 80 in lateral 1-shot film, and it takes me less than 2 minutes to take my series.
And you're still using plain film, correct?
I am, because the new screens, the gadolinium oxysulfate screens have all been 14x17. There's a few companies I'm working with. I've been promised some things that they've never come through with yet, but they're going to be coming out. There's going to be a 17x51, I believe. There's going to be a 14x38 that are coming out. I will go to digital as soon as I can continue to take the 1-shot films. But right now, everything has been 14x17, and you have to stitch them, and sometimes people's inspiration and expiration is at a different point. And you really can't analyze those films posturally as well as a 1-shot film.
Okay, when you say 1-shot, are you talking just the A to P, or are you also talking about the lateral?
I take all my laterals 1-shot.
Oh, wow. That's super cool.
I take all my laterals. All my laterals are taken 1-shot. The only time you're ever going to have problems is if I have somebody that's in the 380 or bigger range.
Why is that?
Just the
penetration.
Try and get through that.
Okay.
Just like your machine, you're going to have a tougher time getting through. Even if it's a high frequency machine like mine is, you're going to have a tougher time getting through those real biggies.
Okay. How far back do you shoot? What's your FFD?
So Gonstead liked 84. Most of the people that use my system have migrated to the 72, but most of my films I still take at 84.
What is the deal with 84 versus 72? What's the
It's
pro and
not
con?
much. It's not much. As a matter of fact, if you want to look at it and see what the difference is, you look at it right in the central ray and you tilt your head to look all the way to the top of where you have your cassette and all the way to the bottom of where you have your cassette. And then back it off 1 foot and do the same thing. So you're not going to get a big difference between 72 and 84. When you're at 40, you have a lot bigger divergence of the ray being that close. So you're looking up and you're looking down on the x-ray.
Okay. So if there's an advantage of taking 84, what would it be?
I think the advantage of taking 84, and the reason that I take them that way is because when you're up close, you have more looking up and looking down. In other words, you're looking down. If you're taking a picture of the pelvis, you're looking up on the vertebra that's on top of the film. You're looking down on the vertebra that is on the bottom of the film. When you back it off, you have less divergence of the ray.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. So I take digital. So I stitch them. So I take 2 sectionals on the A to P and the lateral, and I still use your filtration system. It makes beautiful pictures. But what I've
still do that in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's pretty quick. But because I'm doing that, since we're talking about the central ray and the divergence of the ray on the A to P, I've noticed, okay, Dr. Gonstead would say, he would have a measured difference, right? On the femur head, on the pelvis, there'd be certain measurements, right? And there was a ratio based on how the pelvis is misaligned. It would raise or drop the femur head. But I can't rely on that because my central ray is a lot lower. He was taking 1 exposure on the A to P, right? So since I'm like more up here and down here, I think my EXIN is still reliable, but my measurement for the PI or AS, I can't rely on. So I'm having to rely on some other things, other structures and features.
That's correct. That's exactly right. So because you're looking down, the closer you are, the more you're looking down from the central ray. And it's kind of a big deal at 40-inch focal film distance. Like the other systems that I bought, you had to buy a system that was for just 1 focal film distance. So if you were shooting at 40, you had to shoot exclusively at 40, and you were going to pay $2,200 for that system. If you wanted to also shoot at 72 or 84, you had to buy another system. So now you got $4,400 in a filtration system.
Let's try that.
And it was slow. It just took a long time to set up properly. And most of the doctors that had those systems weren't setting them up properly.
Okay. And when you're saying looking up or down, you're saying that divergence, right, is going to be, so if you're at 72 versus 84 is going to be a little bit more head on versus 72, you're going to be a little bit wider on that viewpoint. Is that right?
So if I was standing next to a 7-foot man and I wanted to look at his forehead, I have to be way up.
Right.
If I go back 72 inches, I do not have to look up as much.
Okay.
So you're not seeing that picture up and that picture down from the divergence of that ray.
Okay. So if a new chiropractic school graduate is taking x-rays, right? What I've noticed is a lot of them don't understand the divergence. And if they're using a digital system that is sectional only, that they don't realize, oh, I can't rely on some of those measurements of the pelvis. So what would you say to that?
I say that's correct. You can't rely on those because if you're taking the lateral and you were to, again, get 40 inches from that patient and you're looking down, say they have their left side against their bucky or their wall stamp, you're going to be looking down further on the one closer, on the femoral head that would be closer than the one further away. And that's why you're going to get it. And instead of the overlap being like this, you're going to see the overlap like this. And it's happening when you're talking about when you're looking for the ASIN or the PIEX. The same is true looking at it from an A to P point of view. You're going to be looking down, and you're going to be looking up more the closer that you get, which is
Okay.
why Dr. Gonstead didn't use 40 inches.
Right. So what advice would you give when they're analyzing the pelvis if that's all they have? That's all the information they have.
Well, I would say go, trust your motion palpation, trust your your palpation skills
Okay.
more than the X-ray at that point. Because
Right.
if you're just going in because he's got a PI of 6 and an IN of 4, and you're not correlating that with your other parameters, that's about go down.
Okay. So tell us, let's get into the filtration piece. Okay. So you talked about getting clear, films and images, based off of the exposure amounts. What does a filtration system do? How does it work? Why do we all need to be using this?
Well, the shielding speaks for itself because you're blocking that area completely. The filtration is taking the X-ray that's coming out of your machine and it's giving you usable X-ray, not the wasted X-ray that you would have to go through the pelvis in the neck. In other words, you're decreasing the amount of X-ray that gets to the patient's thinner areas, the neck and the lung fields. And you're blocking all the radiosensitive organs on both the AP and the lateral.
Can you explain that on your device, on your filtration system? Can you explain how that would work?
Oh, how it works? Sure.
Yeah.
If I was going to set up for the films the way I take them, which is a full spine one-shot film, the first thing I would do, can you see it?
Yeah. Can you show us the mechanism of everything you have there? What it's,
Sure.
what it's called, what it's for?
I found out early on when I made my first one, I didn't want to have to drill into a column. There's a lot of mechanism there on your flutters, and you don't on your collimator, your lead shields, your lead shutters, and drilling into an X-ray collimator, and then setting up rails. They never seemed to be at every chiropractor's office I went to. They never seemed to be aligned properly, and so a lot of them used some type of a tape so that they could put it where they wanted to. It just looked very unprofessional, in my opinion. And so when I designed this, I designed it so that it's truly idiot-proof. You do not have to drill into your collimator. If you can work Velcro, you can adhere my system. There's 3 pieces of Velcro. There's one on the back that supports the weight of the system, and then there's 2 on the front that keep it from doing this. Obviously, I don't have this mounted on a collimator, so I'm able to do this. But if you have the Velcro on the alignment, it'll never move. And then we also provide a belt that goes around your collimator. So if you want to shoot an extremity, for instance, you don't have to take the system off.
Okay.
So
great.
what I do if I'm going to take an extremity is I remove the attenuator, and then I just turn my system down. Obviously, these would be on.
Right.
But if I was going to set up for an A to P, say I was going to set up for an A to P, I take one measurement. For instance, if it was a 19 centimeter abdominal measurement, which would be a fairly thin person, first thing I do is I set the breast shields, and when I'm looking at the patient, I'm moving it superior and inferior until I have the breast covered, and then you move the breast shields in and out, medial and lateral, just to get it aligned. So the spine would be right in between. That would be for a 72 or 84, and then they would be set like this for a 40-inch thing.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And they're all magnetic, right?
Correct. And if I was shooting a female at 40 inches, it would be set up like this.
Okay.
And what I do is I put the shadow, it's about 4 inches underneath the iliac crest. So I touch the iliac crest and get it close, and then go back, and you can move it up or down, you can move it left or right, and then you drop this down. You correlate the measurement with with the amount of shields. So at 19, when I'm shooting an A to P, I would be using 1.
Can you explain what you're Can you explain what you're measuring?
Yeah, I'm measuring at the abdomen.
Okay.
I make all those measurements at the abdomen, and then when I send the system out, I have 2 technique charts. I have one that is for high frequency, and then I have one that is for single phase.
Okay.
So you make one measurement. I don't know if you're able to see this, but you make one measurement, and then you just follow my technique chart.
Okay, great.
And that'll get you close. But a lot of doctors, what I say is whatever you're happy going through the pelvis at, that's what you set it up for that patient. Okay. If you're already getting good films through the pelvis, this does not intensify anything. It decreases. So you're either going to be blocking or you're going to be shielding or both. So that would be set up for the A to P. If I'm taking a 72 or 84, I would set it up like this. I would use the smaller gonad shield. And this is obviously, again, for a female. For a male, that's now set up for the man. And then you lower the shadow until it's at the nipple or the T6 level.
Okay.
And you're ready to shoot the film. When you go to shoot the lateral, you're dropping this down. And I tell people you can bring it around 180 degrees, but really what you're doing is you're bringing it at an angle a little bit more than that so that the angulation is coming across the top of the trapezius and cutting through the C7T1 interspace.
Okay.
So in that situation, if it was a female that was, again, that same 19, I'd be using 3. If it was a big football player, I would be using 6.
Okay.
And when I shoot the lateral on a female, I'm also using breast shield, which is that white shield right there. So we set this for the lung fields, and then you move the breast shield until you cut her. You bring that down so that this is getting from the neck up. So you'll see that it's bevel. On the A to P, if you don't have that bevel, you would see a line.
Right.
And I didn't want to see those lines. So what's actually happening is it's increasing that intensity over an area from the T6 up.
Got it.
On the lateral, you want it flat because there's a huge difference between a person's neck from the lateral and their shoulders.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Very cool. Oh, 100%.
It truly is easy. I can teach people how to use this in 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay, so what I've done, so just a couple of things that I've done with mounting is I use a Velcro, but there's like little screws in my collimator just because sometimes I'm a little bit rougher on that slide with a filtration system. So I actually put some flathead screws in there, and it's like just over the plastic, and it's bulletproof. Okay.
You're doing that to keep it stable?
Yeah. I've done this on 2 systems where I had these little screws on the front, and you may not, someone may not have that, but for me, my systems have had that, and I lined it up, and it's like solid on there. I never take it off. And I do a lot of extremity x-rays because I teach for Mark Working's program.
Right.
And he did a lot of extremity x-rays. So I just raised that filtration system kind of to the top of the rails. I don't ever have to take anything off. So you can use this if you're taking x-rays. And I take them at 40. I take them at 40.
And you can do that. It's just that if I'm going to shoot an extremity and I've got that retaining belt that goes around the collimator just to keep this solid. Right. I just take and move that out of the way. It just makes it easy. You can use it either. You can do it either way.
Either way, yeah. So I do it that way. They both work, but I just wanted the audience to know you don't even have to even take it off. It's that easy.
Yeah, if you're gonna mount it permanently, you wouldn't have to take it off.
Yeah,
you slide it out of the way so it's not in the field.
So cool. And then sometimes I'll even use the red for the thyroid because
Yeah, it
it's
can
thin
be.
enough. Yeah. So you can even cover that. So you hit every base, everything you need to hit with this filtration system. And I mean, I'm taking my wife's x-rays on my system. I'm taking my kids' x-rays on my system. So for me, I'm like, okay, I want to make sure I have the best for my own family, and that translates to everyone else that's in my practice.
Well, there was a time when I wasn't proud of my films. Like I said, I bought the Nolan system, I bought the Bolin system, I bought the SuperTech system, I bought the Nuclear Associates system, and I had the old Sportelli wedges, if you've ever heard of those.
No, I haven't heard of
And
those.
yeah, Sportelli of NZMIC fame. Yeah, he had a system at one point, but
Okay.
they just wouldn't do what I wanted them to do. So on the other systems, what you have to do is you have to put filters and shields over each other, and after the A to P, you have to take them all off and then grab the A to P ones and put it on. With mine, you're spinning the attenuator around, setting the number, and you're ready to go because the same
Super cool.
attenuator does A to P and lap. It's just faster.
Oh, 100%. So how does clarity translate into making clinical decisions? Clarity of the images of the spine.
I mean, it's as important to have good X-rays as it is to take X-rays at all. If you're taking no X-rays, and I have some people where I live that don't own an X-ray machine, they're not running a scope. I guess they're relying on static and motion palpation, maybe visualization. I wouldn't want to run my practice that way. Not adjusting the way I do. I need that information. Matter of fact, I had a fire at my previous office in 2014, and I went 9 months without a new patient because I had to buy a building and I had to build it out, and it took 9 months. I continued to see my current patients, but I wouldn't take a new patient because it's part of my protocol. I can't imagine going and doing what we do as Gonstead practitioners without the right information.
So how long did it take you to develop this filtration system?
Oh, I would say its infancy was from infancy to this, probably 3 years. I did a
Okay.
lot of prototyping. I have a machine shop in town who happens, I see a lot of those guys. So I started talking to them and I would say, try this. And they would go back and they would make it for me and I would try it. And I'd be like, no, that isn't it. And I'd have them try another design. And to try and come up with a design that you can use the attenuator for both A to P and lateral, it was a lot of prototyping and trial and error, but about 3 years, I would say.
So
And
there's
now
been
that it's done, we haven't made any changes because I don't know how to improve. I've
okay.
asked all my doctors if there's a technique that you use that's not in my manual, please let me know. If you're using it and I've got doctors that have used it for instance, when you're taking a tibia or when you're taking a picture of a femur, you again that cathode and that anode is important, but it's also important to use a filter because you have a thicker and a thinner area when you're taking those. I don't use it for that, but I have doctors that are.
Is there advantage of having a high frequency generator versus
Yes.
having tell me about that.
Well, I loved my old single phase machine. My single phase machine was a beast. Yeah, and I could double tap it. So I could get through a guy that was 410 pounds. The high frequency machine is a faster system. So you're not taking the x-ray for as long typically, and you just have more usable x-ray. Single phase machines are still out there. They're still legal. They're still producing them. But like when I went to buy a new machine after my fire, there was no reason. I didn't even look at single phase machines because I can decrease the radiation dose to the people I care the most about, which is my patients, by buying a better machine. So I went that route. The reason I haven't gone to digital, there's only one reason I haven't gone to digital, because I would love to have that. I would love to be able to, on a keyboard, punch in a name and have it come up on, I wouldn't have to grab x-rays, and I can tell you my office staff would really love me to go to digital. But I won't do it until I can take the same kind of films I take with analog.
Okay.
But high frequency decreases the radiation dose to the patient, to answer your question simply.
So this device will decrease ionizing radiation to the patient.
Correct.
It'll help improve clinical outcomes through clarity. Correct?
Correct.
So why would someone not have a filtration system?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. I built this for me. I did not build this to go commercial with it. And one of my buddies saw it, and he had to have one. And then one of his buddies saw it, and it's, for instance, I've got a chiropractor in Anchorage who will remain nameless, and everybody that leaves his office, and there's a lot of them, when as soon as they leave, they buy my system because they've seen what it does. So he's created a lot of sales for me.
I love how the intentionality you put into it, not only just functionally, but also aesthetically. I mean, to me, it's just amazing. And I always explain to every one of my patients, I'm like, hey, this is different. You're not going to find this at other chiropractors' offices, most likely. So it kind of becomes like a niche element to the office and just really builds so much value. I want to take a quick break from the conversation to share something with you. If you're enjoying what Dr. Larsen has been teaching so far and you've considered upgrading your digital x-ray quality, he's generously offered the Beyond the Spine community an exclusive discount. You can save 5% on the Larsen X-ray Filtration System by using the code BobbyFano when you make your order. I've always believed that better information leads to better clinical decisions, and clear radiographs are a big part of that process. If you're interested in learning more, be sure to check out the Larsen X-Ray Filtration System and use code BobbyFano to receive your discount at larsenxray.com. Now let's get back to the conversation with Dr. Lee Larsen.
Filtration system. But when I go to show my films, a picture's worth 1,000 words. To see is to know, to not see is to guess. I have it above my x-ray button. We've all seen it. Why would you want to guess with a patient's health? I don't understand that thought process. And there is a cost, but it's less than half of what the other systems are. I just happened to be looking yesterday, and I saw that there is a set of breast shields that you can currently buy for $777. And all it does is shields the breast. I'm thinking maybe I need to go up in price. But we're real happy with, the system's, we're selling the system. We're making a little bit, but I'm never going to get rich selling x-ray systems. Quite frankly, my office staff laughs at me because we get somebody that calls in. I'm like, I got to get this put together. I'm going to have to talk to my plastics manufacturer. I love chiropractic. I don't love this, but it was a necessity. It was something that the profession needed.
So I've always heard, okay, when you have like a patient that's like, I don't want to get x-rays because of the radiation component. And I've heard in the past, people are like, well, you get more radiation flying from one place to another in an airplane. Can you explain that?
Sure.
Okay.
It's actually in my manual. I can grab it. So FDA issues strong warnings against excessive radiation dose. And if you look at the bottom of that, this will tell you what the reduction rates are.
Okay.
Are you able to see it?
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're using rare earth film and screen back in the day, like I am, it would reduce from the old screens 2 to 6 times. If you're using a compensating filter, which is what this is, it's 2 to 5 times. Breast shields decrease the radiation dose 3 to 10 times. So you get a total of somewhere, depending on whether you're using all of these things, of 10 times to 350 times less radiation dose. And the X-ray physicist that tested this told me, I live in the Omaha, Nebraska area, and he told me same amount of X-ray with taking a full spine set of ADP and lateral. Because keep in mind, when you're taking sectionals, there's scatter radiation for each of those sectionals. So when you're taking sectionals, you get a larger radiation dose to the patient than when you're taking a full spine one-shot film.
Right.
And he told me same amount of radiation as you would get from a flight from Omaha, Nebraska to Denver, Colorado. Now, did he test that? That's what he told me. He's the guy that comes in and tests the X-ray machine for Nebraska.
So what would you say to that patient that's like, well, I'm afraid of the radiation dose?
I would say, were you scared to get in a plane and fly 350 miles? Because if you're not, it doesn't justify it. First of all, our X-rays, we got a lot of warranted problems from the medical profession because of the way we took X-rays, because we were over radiating our patients. It was unnecessary, but they didn't have the technology that we currently have.
Right.
And unfortunately, the current technology has actually led us away from, in my opinion, the best practices, which is a full spine one-shot ADP and lateral film, because we weren't able to do that, and we're still not able to do that with a gadolinium oxysulfate, or the other one is calcium iodide, I believe. But the fluorescence has come a long way, and with digital, we're going to be able to go back, because they're not even teaching chiropractic X-rays at the chiropractic college. They're teaching standing medical things.
Right. Right.
And that's not what we're based on.
How long have you been in practice?
33 years. I opened my office on November 30th of 1992.
So with your journey, knowing what you know now, all the research you've done, what would you give your younger self when you were first thinking about developing this device or getting into chiropractic altogether? What kind of advice would you give your younger self?
I can tell you the advice that I got from an 84-year-old chiropractor before I started in practice. He told me two things. He told me to practice 1 year without any help, which I thought was crazy. I said, why would you do that? He said, because you'll appreciate your office staff when you've had to do what you don't want to do. And you'll pay them better, and you'll treat them with more respect, and you'll retain them longer. Because retention's important. Turnover with your office staff is turmoil, and it costs you money. I've had 2 office managers since I've been in practice. My first one was with me for 6 years. She was probably good for about 3. My last one, the one I have now, has been with me for 24 years.
Wow.
So that was great advice. The other thing he told me was be willing to weed your practice, which I did not understand. And I said, what does that mean? He said, you're going to spend 90% of your time with the 10% of your patients that you least like to be with. That's a weed. You need to make more room for flowers. And I didn't understand it until I had been in practice for about 6 months. And I understand it now more. Be willing to let the ones that are not a good fit for your office find somebody they're a good fit for, and make room for the great patient that you... Every time I've done it, and I've had to do it 6 times in 33 years, we've had 2 new patients call in within the hour. Why does that happen? I don't know, but it's pretty gratifying.
Love it. That's really great advice. So where can the audience, if there's a chiropractor out there that's been in practice for a long time, or there's a new chiropractic school grad that wants to get this device for their practice, where can they find it?
Larsen X-ray Filtration. You just come up to my website.
.com, right?
Larsen X-ray. Yes.
Perfect. Go check it out, everyone. Dr. Larsen, I really appreciate your time being here. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom and your experience and your amazing invention. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you so much.